ZeroHedge recently republished an article. The article was originally from alt-market.com. The author's name of the article is Brandon Smith. The title of the article is "The Fed is a Suicide Bomber with a Deeper Agenda." And I'm going to add something to that title. But the author's premise is that they're designing the Federal Reserve to self-destruct. They want to take down the economy. I mean, those of you who listen to this, these videos of mine, that's my thing as well. I think they're trying to create a controlled collapse. They want to orchestrate the mother of all collapses and pretty much pick up all the pieces and the planet. The author's premise is that it's pretty much the same thing, although he uses some interesting terminology. I'm going to get into all that, but before I do, I would just ask that if you like this video, please hit the like as well as the subscribe button. Thank you. Okay, so Brandon Smith says that the Fed is orchestrating, or not the Fed. The Fed is, his position is, the Fed is really an instrument. It's a tool. The people who are behind the Fed are orchestrating the everything bubble. So we've had the tech bubble, the housing bubble. This thing is a house of cards, and they are going to take down all sectors because everything is interrelated. And what he pointed out was that, what's his name, Jerome Powell, he's the head of the Fed right now, he's raising interest rates. And this spike in interest rates will create problems because a lot of companies, to prop up to keep their stock inflated, they're buying their own stock. And he's saying, amongst other things, but that what will happen is because the interest rates will go up, the companies will have to go deeper and deeper into debt. They won't be able to pay it. They won't be able to buy their own stock, which is, in my opinion, artificially inflated. And then these companies will become so leveraged, everything is just going to have a chain reaction, domino effect, collapse. Whether Powell raises the interest rates now or something happens later, it's still going to be a domino effect because the stock is still artificially inflated, and even if the interest rates send it over the edge, an increase in the interest rates, when you have a situation where an economy is based on artificially inflating the value of companies, you're headed for disaster anyway. And so Smith's contention is that December is the beginning of this Great Depression tsunami. Now, I don't know. It could be. I am not an economist. But you don't have to be an economist to look at this thing and know this is going to collapse. You could, I think a high school freshman could take a rudimentary look at how the system is set up and realize that what they've been doing, with what they've been doing, with the banks too big to fail, no regulation, no corrections after the big collapse or the giant recession of 2008, the big $29 trillion bailout. And what do they do? Instead of imposing regulations like they did after the Great Depression with Glass-Steagall, they actually did more deregulation. And so, yeah, this thing's going to crash. This could very well be this decline in the stock market in December could be the beginning, or maybe it could be a little bit later. I do not know. I'm not enough of an economics expert. I just have basic common sense. I think, and that's really all that it takes to look at and see the precarious nature of this system. And Smith's contention, like I said, is that this is all designed. What they're trying to do is create a new world order. And that sounds kind of cliche, but I agree with him. the New World Order, we heard that from George H. Bush. And with the everything bubble, so normally in a bubble situation, what they do is you have the tech bubble, this bubble, they'll create a bubble, and then they'll burst the bubble. And then they sell when everything's high because they have the inside information, the globalists, the banking insiders. And then so the bubble, just before the bubble bursts, they sell everything. The bubble crashes, and then they buy everything back on pennies on the dollar. And they did it with the real estate, whatever. So the thing is, what he's saying with this bubble, it's different. And I agree. I think the economy, I've heard economists say, people who have inside information to the Fed have told me, directly, they have never seen anything like this. This is what the people who work at the Fed say. They have never seen anything like this in their lifetimes, the tsunami that is coming. And there is no plan B. And I agree with Smith. I think that they know what is happening. They are going to plan this everything bubble. So now it's not the tech bubble, the housing bubble. It is going to be treasury bonds. It's going to be stocks. It's going to be real estate. They are going to crash this mother. And the ultimate goal is to create a new world order and buy everything, soak up everything on the planet, because people will be so frightened. Smith pointed this out, and I say it all the time. A population that is in fear will give up all its civil liberties. It will agree to everything. And what they're going to do is create a one world government, a globalized government, ruled by these bank cartels. And people will, because they're in such a state of terror, it's going to be frightening. When the banks start to fail, when everything starts to collapse, it's a terrifying situation. It's the fear of the unknown. It's instability. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basic fundamental security is a primal human need, or desire, I should say. You've got to have your head screwed on tight to keep you cool when the shit starts to fall apart. And they are going to create a one world currency, a digital currency, and they are going to create an Orwellian, totalitarian one world government. That is their objective. And you may ask why. They could keep this thing afloat. I mean, Smith pointed this out. It's not just about money, although wealth is power to them. They get off, and this is my theory, I think they get a psychosexual gratification. They feel empowered. It's almost like an orgasmic bliss when they turn us into factory farm animals. The more they could debase us, it gives them a feeling of elevation. And especially when they could turn humanity into factory farm animals, I'm talking the whole planet. To them, that is their thrill. It's like a peeping Tom or somebody who has a shoe fetish. It's a specific psychosexual gratification, and that's what gets them off. They have enough wealth to live 10 million lifetimes. It's not about the money. They could keep the thing going and be comfortable. I mean, not beyond comfortable. I mean, mega wealthy. But they get off on it. They enjoy it. It's like a serial killer. They like it. And so this thing's going to crash, and because of the fear, and they've already instituted very effective propaganda with MSNBC, Fox, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, the CIA, whatever. The corporate media is going to go along with this. The CIA really doesn't exist as a national agency anymore. It's all been privatized. These are private corporations. And they want to destroy America. That is the goal of the Fed. The Fed is not here to save America. The Fed is here to destroy the United States, because that represents a sovereign nation state. And just like they were doing with Iraq, which was a sovereign nation state, Libya, sovereign nation state, Iran, sovereign nation state, Syria, sovereign nation state. They are trying to, one by one, that's what these, I mean, there were other objectives. Part of the reason for these Middle East wars was to destroy the last remaining nation states that hadn't been infiltrated by the bank cartels. And what they hope is for everybody to go along with this New World Order agenda, whatever you want to call it, this Orwellian totalitarian dictatorship, and where they will have the power of life and death over you with the press of a button. But they may underestimate the spirit of some of the American people. Granted, the majority of the American people at this stage, just their consciousness is on the level of rabid sheep. They could be manipulated into turning on anybody, anything, at the drop of a dime, just like Orwell's 1984. One day the people were screaming against Eurasia, then East Asia. A minute later, they've almost reached that point of being able to change people's opinion at the drop of a dime. It was like with Syria. 1 minute we're fighting ISIS, then the next minute we're helping ISIS. 1 minute it's Assad. No, 1 minute it's the Russians, then it could be China. They could just create an enemy like that, and they are going to manipulate these people. But there are those of you who are free beings. There are those of you who do not accept, just because somebody in a position of authority or comes from a quote-unquote legitimate media source like the New York Times, you don't buy it. And I should also say, Smith pointed out, don't count on Trump. I think there are some people still gullible enough to believe Trump is some kind of savior. You look at all his handlers, whether it's people he picks, Mnuchin, he picked Goldman Sachs, mortgage fraudster Mnuchin to head the Treasury. All right, that should tell you something. His handler, Steve Bannon, was Goldman Sachs. You look at all his handlers, all the people in his circle, total Goldman Sachs. Salvation is not coming from Trump. I like Bernie Sanders. I still respect him, but for you progressives, Bernie Sanders is not going to save you. This thing is too deep. And I agree with Smith. I think the crash is inevitable. It is going to happen. And so what we have to look toward is getting back the republic post-crash. I think there will be an opportunity. They will try to corral us. They will, and it's disgusting how many sheep there are out there who don't question anything. But some of you, I think we have to put aside our differences. I'm a libertarian, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a progressive, I'm a this, I'm a that, white, black, da-da-da, divide, conquer, which they will use very effectively, I'm sure, when this thing goes down. You need scapegoats, you need to pit people against each other. That's going to be part of the modus operandi. But why don't we just focus on getting a constitutional democracy, get a republic, and if you've listened to me, what I've always been saying, localized economy. So in the United States, do what they did, the founding fathers. They had 13 semi-autonomous economies. If we have 50 states or whatever it winds up being after this thing collapses, whether it's 13, 50, whatever, local economies. I live in New York City. Why shouldn't we grow all our own food here? We could create greenhouses, skyscraper greenhouses. We could have our own solar power energy grids, or we should even be working on a cold fusion, non-radioactive reactors. Once you create limitless energy, you can do anything. We should manufacture our clothing here. And if you live in Arkansas, Alaska, Texas, whatever cities and towns, this globalization shit is bullshit. We have the technology with automation, robotics, farming, and I don't know, after it collapse, we might have to retool ourselves. But you could grow anything anywhere, you could produce anything anywhere. We should all be growing our own things. I would even go so far as say each state should have their own local currency, and then maybe we have a national currency that we all plug into, but that way it's insulated. If one currency fails, it doesn't take everybody down with it. This is an opportunity. This will be when this crash happens, this will be the existential battle for survival of the human race. Because if they win, it is a permanent, never-ending, Orwellian, totalitarian dictatorship. If they retain the technology intact, if they will just perfected artificial intelligence, drones, robot armies. They are all the stuff in the Middle East with these blowing up these wedding parties with the drones, the Guantanamo Bays, the tortures. It's all practice for you. These Middle East wars you paid for, these Guantanamo Bays you paid for, these torture sites, these ministries of love. What was it in Orwell's 1984? The Ministry of Love. That's going to be the Guantanamo Bays. If we do not come together, put aside our petty differences, because that's what they really are. If we put aside our petty differences and we preserve and take back the Republic, we could win. If they win, it is finished. It is going to be slavery in perpetuity. We will have our window of opportunity, and we need to take advantage of it. Like I said, I don't know if this crash is starting to happen now. I don't know. I'm not enough of it. Economics is not my scope of expertise, but I have enough common sense to know when I'm being lied to. All the bullshit stats they gave you about the economy is growing. Remember when when Trump first took office, and a couple years or two into his administration, oh, the economy's booming. Bullshit. All their stats are fudged. They're lies. They are fucking liars. It's all a scam, MK Ultra mindfuck, and they're going to turn this into MK Ultra Disneyland. These fuckers are evil. And, if you're in the process of waking up, speed it up as quick as possible. If you're already woken, keep your head screwed on tight. And this thing is going to get really wild, man. This is going to be a wild fucking ride. And they are going to clamp down hard. This dictatorship is going to go in overdrive. They already killed free speech, habeas corpus, NDA, Patriot Act. That was all to control you, to set the stage for this control collapse after the post 9/11 coup d'etat, which overthrew the Republic. It is a dictatorship now. It is going to, but it is still inverted totalitarianism. To quote Sheldon Wallen's term, they still have the fake mask of Republican, Democrat. Oh, you could vote, you're free. Blah, blah. Bullshit. This is the Democratic Socialist Libertarian. If you dig the message, please like, subscribe, share. Feel free to sound off in the comments section. For more information, go to demsolib.com, Twitter, Instagram, @demsolib. Thanks for listening.